Now, the fifth session of the Pan-African Parliament has come to a screeching halt after a delegate tested positive for COVID-19. The Parliament was supposed to elect new leadership today, but this has been postponed to a yet unconfirmed date. Jeffrey Onganga, Media and Communications Officer at the Pan-African Parliament, says following the detection of the case, all COVID-19 protocols will be followed. These include decontamination as well as contact tracing. For more on the story, I'm joined now by Mr. Vipya Harawa, who is the Pan-African Parliament's clerk. A very good afternoon to you, Mr. Harawa, and thank you very much for your time today. Tell us about what transpired a bit earlier on today. For all intents and purposes, according to the agenda, you were meant to be voting for your new leadership.
That is correct. We started the day normally, and then we're in the premises. The support staff were in the premises at around 6 this morning, and then around 7, we got information that one of the staff tested positive for COVID-19 last night. And so in keeping with the guidelines and protocols of the South African Health Department, we decided that we have to shut down the premises. The honorable members had already arrived, most of them, and so went into the chamber, made the announcement, and we've had to shut down the precincts of the Pan-African Parliament. And this afternoon from 3 o'clock, we commence the decontamination process.
The individual who's tested positive for COVID-19, you say they are a member of staff. Is that synonymous with being a delegate, or is it another supportive member of the staff?
The delegates are not full-time at the Pan-African Parliament, but the member of staff who tested positive works full-time in the precincts of the Pan-African Parliament.
And how was this? Go ahead, sir, please.
She was last in the premises on Monday this week, 3-4 days ago. She had mild symptoms, and then she just decided as a precautionary measure to take a taste, and turned out she was positive, and that's what led us to the sudden decision this morning to postpone the elections. So now we are rescheduling the elections to Monday. Parliament will resume on Monday, the 31st, at 11:30.
And how was the announcement of the postponement received by the delegates? I believe not all were in agreement with the fact that there should be a postponement. If you could just verify that for us.
No, not all were in agreement. The main agenda for this session is elections. And the hottest part of the elections is the election of bureau members. That's the president and the 4 vice presidents. And the particular session this morning was being chaired by the acting president of the Pan-African Parliament, who also happens to be a candidate in this election. And there were suspicions from other corners of the parliamentary delegations that it might be a ploy, that there is no case of COVID. He's just trying to buy time so that he can wait until the situation is more favorable to him, and then proceed with the elections. So there were suspicions that the report that I gave for shutting down the premises may not be correct. So naturally, when people are in a competition, there's that kind of suspicions. So that is what transpired.
You are all part of the Pan-African Parliament, but if you could give us an idea of the dynamics at the Pan-African Parliament? Are you all speaking in one voice? I mean, you did, clearly state that it is a competition, but ultimately when the vision is one, one would think that competition does go by the wayside. What is the current atmosphere at the Parliament?
The current atmosphere is that we have 5 regions, and each region is entitled to nominate a candidate for the position of president. 3 regions have nominated candidates. The other 2 have not. But each of the 5 regions has allegiance to one of the 3 candidates. And the atmosphere now is that everyone is fighting for their candidate. Everybody wants naturally that their candidate should win, that their candidate should be the next president. So the greatest rivalry is for the position of president, because the other positions, the positions of vice president, are spread out evenly amongst the regions. But the position of president has to go to one region. So the atmosphere now is really of campaign, of competition, of looking at principles that work to one's candidate's advantage. And then after the elections, we then go back to one Africa, one voice.
But as you say, Mr. Harawa, that is only after the elections. Talk to us about the vision of the Pan-African Parliament, the next decade, what it is that you'll be focusing on. One would assume that that vision will also inform the president that is going to be elected.
We are actually at a turning point at the moment in terms of the history of the Pan-African Parliament. And the ideal leader at this time is one who will harness our 19 years of experience to create a platform for launching the parliament or relaunching the parliament as a full-fledged legislative body. Until now, we have not been making laws, and there is need that we graduate from our current mandate of being an advisory body or a consultative body to doing the ultimate job of a parliament, which is lawmaking. And so if you ask me about the next 10 years, I would say that ideally the next years of the Pan-African Parliament would have to be focused towards beginning to make legislation that integrate the continent.
I'd like you to comment, if you would, Mr. Harawa, on a comment or a statement that was made by the leader of the Economic Freedom Fighters, Julius Malema. He made a statement saying that if the MPs at the Pan-African Parliament are interested in the unity of Africa, that they will not be supportive of policies that are pro-imperialism and pro-colonialism. Talk to us about how that statement was received, as well as what it meant to the Pan-African Parliament, if at all, if anything at all.
Honorable Malema's statement is one of several statements that have been made by various honorable members of the Pan-African Parliament on the floor of Parliament. And the general message is that the parliamentarians could be more united. I think the context in which Honorable Malema made that statement, Honorable Malema and others, is that currently the parliamentarians seem to be compromised in their unity by legacies of colonialism, for example, language. And that tends to divide rather than unite their common cause. it also becomes a diversion from the issues that they ought to be focusing on in trying to reach the expectations of the continent. And so the ideology of unity among the parliamentarians is being compromised by who was your colonial master, what language do you speak, where do you come from, are you a dark African or are you a light African? And all these are issues that divert attention from what parliamentarians should really be focusing on in terms of unity.
Well, thank you very much for that update, Mr. Vipya Harawa, clerk at the Pan-African Parliament, dealing there with very elementary issues, I must say. But thank you for the update nonetheless. He has confirmed that the voting will resume come Monday, the 31st of May at 11:30. They were scheduled to elect their leadership today, the president as well as the vice president. So Monday, the 31st of May, is when it will be. Thank you for your time, sir.